He watched his wife have nightmares and felt nothing. That was the moment he knew he had changed. His wife told him she had been having nightmares. She looked scared. She looked like she needed him. And his first thought, the very first thing that came to his mind before he could even stop himself, was good. Not concern. Not the old instinct to hold her and make it better. Just a quiet, cold, satisfied good. That single word tells you everything about what betrayal actually does to a person. And what makes this story hit so differently is that he knows it too. He is not proud of it. He is not bragging. He is scared of himself. Because the man who thought good when his wife was suffering, that is not the man he used to be. And somewhere between who he was and who he is now, something broke in a way that might not ever come back together. Let us go back to the beginning, because you need to understand what kind of person this man was before any of this happened. He describes himself as having a heart that was sweet and boyish and blindly loving. That is such a specific and honest way to say it. He is not talking about being naive in a foolish sense. He is talking about the kind of love that is completely open. The kind where you do not hold back, where you do not protect yourself, where you give everything without keeping a single piece in reserve just in case. You can picture the person he is describing. Someone who remembered the small things, who reached for his wife's hand without thinking about it, who genuinely believed that love was something you poured out without measuring. That was him. That was how he loved his wife. Not carefully, not strategically, but totally and without condition. And she had a long-distance emotional affair that included sexting. Now I want to be clear about what an emotional affair actually is, because sometimes people try to minimize it by saying nothing physical happened. An emotional affair is when you choose to give someone else the intimacy, the vulnerability, the private parts of yourself that should belong to your partner. Every late-night conversation, every secret shared, every moment of closeness offered to someone who was not her husband was a withdrawal from something that belonged to him. The sexting makes it worse, obviously. But even without that, the emotional investment, the secret conversations, the choosing of someone else over and over again, that is a profound betrayal. It is not a mistake. It is a series of deliberate choices made at the expense of the person who trusted you most. Every single one of those choices had a moment before it where she could have stopped. She did not stop. He says they have come a long way since then. So this is a couple in reconciliation. They are trying to rebuild. And that matters, because what he is feeling is not the raw shock of just finding out. This is something different. This is a man who has been sitting with the damage for months, possibly longer, trying to hold his marriage together with his bare hands, trying to heal, trying to extend grace, waking up next to someone he loves and someone he no longer fully recognizes, and slowly realizing that the process of trying to heal has fundamentally changed who he is in the process. Here is the part that breaks my heart a little. He says he used to break his heart on her suffering. That is such a painfully beautiful way to say it. It means that her pain used to cost him something real. When she was hurting, he felt it too. He could not just sit there and let her be in pain because loving her meant her pain became part of him. If she cried, something in him ached. If she was anxious or scared or sad, he did not just observe it from the outside and try to fix it like a problem. He absorbed it. He carried it alongside her because that is what you do when someone else's well-being is woven into your own. That is deep, genuine, selfless love. The kind most people spend their whole lives hoping to receive. And she had it. She had it completely. She had a man whose heart literally broke on her behalf when she was struggling, and she chose, repeatedly and in secret, to give pieces of herself to someone else. And then she had the affair. Now he feels like she deserves to be punished. Now he hopes her nightmares get worse. And he is terrified by this, because he does not recognize himself in those feelings. He says the experience has turned him evil. But I want to push back on that word, just a little, because I think what he is calling evil is actually something else entirely. What he is describing is grief. It is the specific, devastating grief of watching a part of yourself die and being unable to stop it. The sweet, boyish, blindly loving version of him did not disappear because he became a bad person. That version died because it was not protected. Because he gave it fully and completely to someone who treated it carelessly. And when something that vulnerable gets hurt badly enough, the psyche does what it has to do to survive. It builds walls. It stops feeling soft things. It learns to hold people at a distance because proximity is where you get hurt. It converts pain into coldness because coldness is easier to carry than grief, and because coldness does not leave you exposed the way tenderness does. The vindictiveness he feels is not him becoming evil. It is his nervous system trying to protect what is left of him. The problem is that those protective instincts can calcify into something permanent if they are not eventually addressed. And that is the real danger here. Not that he thought good when she had nightmares, but that if he and his wife stay in this reconciliation without both of them fully reckoning with the depth of what was lost, he might never find his way back to that softer version of himself. The walls that went up to protect him can also become a prison. Let me say something about the reconciliation piece, because I think it matters enormously. Reconciliation after infidelity is one of the hardest things two people can attempt. And it only has any chance of working if both people are doing real, honest, uncomfortable work. Not just the betrayed partner trying to heal and forgive. Not just one person white-knuckling their way through triggers and sleepless nights and trying to pretend they are fine. The person who caused the damage has to actively and consistently show up to earn back what was destroyed. Not just apologize once and expect things to gradually smooth over with time. But show up every single day and do the continuous, unglamorous, deeply intentional work of rebuilding trust from the ground up. That looks like transparency without being asked. It looks like patience that does not expire. It looks like understanding that the betrayed partner will have bad days long after the betrayer has moved on internally, and meeting those bad days with accountability instead of defensiveness. What worries me about this situation is the way he describes his wife's fear during those nightmares. He does not tell us what she said about them. He does not tell us she reached for him in the dark, or that she told him she was sorry again, or that she was having nightmares specifically about losing him. We just know she was scared and that he, the man who used to break his heart on her suffering, felt nothing but a quiet and cold satisfaction. That distance between them, that emotional gap where warmth used to live without any effort at all, that is the real crisis happening inside this marriage right now. Not the nightmares. The silence where his compassion used to be. Because here is the thing about vindictiveness. It feels powerful from the inside. It feels like finally having some control after a long period of total helplessness. When someone destroys your peace, your trust, your sense of reality, and you have had to just absorb all of that pain with nowhere to put it, nowhere to direct it, no outlet that does not make you look like the difficult one. The moment something shifts and you feel like they are getting even the smallest taste of what you have been living in, there is a dark satisfaction in that. It makes sense. It is human. It does not make you a monster. But it is also a very clear sign that the wound is still very much open and very much in need of real attention. He did not used to be like this. He knows it. He is saying it out loud on the internet to strangers, which tells you how much it is weighing on him, and that matters more than people might realize. Because the people who actually turn cold permanently, the ones who become genuinely cruel or indifferent without remorse, they do not sit there asking why they have changed. They do not lie awake grieving the person they used to be. They do not feel scared of their own thoughts. The fact that he is troubled by his own coldness, that he is disturbed enough to name it and examine it and hold it up to the light, tells you that the core of who he is still exists. It is just buried under a lot of pain that has had nowhere to go and no one to properly witness it. So what does he actually need? He needs a space where he can say all of this out loud without performing okayness for anyone, including himself. He needs his wife to understand, deeply and consistently, that the damage she caused is not something that gets cleaned up simply by deciding to stay together and move forward. Staying is the beginning, not the resolution. He needs time, and real therapeutic support, and probably some sessions where both of them sit in front of someone skilled enough to help them look honestly at what this reconciliation is actually built on. Is it love? Is it habit? Is it fear? Is it something real enough to sustain two people through the long and unglamorous work of healing? And he needs to hear, clearly and without qualification, that what he is feeling does not make him a bad man. It makes him a man who loved completely and got hurt in a way that fundamentally altered him. That is not evil. That is consequence. That is what happens to open hearts that do not get treated with care. Now here is where I land on all of this. What this man is experiencing is not a character defect. It is not proof that he is broken beyond repair or that he has become someone unworthy of love or of his own respect. It is proof that love made him vulnerable in the deepest possible way and that vulnerability was not honored the way it deserved to be. The coldness he feels now is a direct and understandable response to having that openness exploited by the exact person who was supposed to protect it. I am not saying it is healthy to stay in that coldness forever. I am not saying the goal is to keep feeling satisfied when she suffers. But I refuse to let him call himself evil for feeling it. He is not evil. He is wounded. Those are very different things. If his wife truly wants this reconciliation to work, she has to stop waiting for him to come back to himself on his own and start actively doing the things that might make that return feel safe and possible. She has to understand that her nightmares, as genuinely hard as they are for her to experience, are not the emotional emergency right now. The real emergency is that the man she married is sitting beside her in the dark thinking good when she suffers, and he is frightened by himself, and that fear is the last remaining piece of his old self still fighting to stay alive. He needs to hold on to that fear. Not the vindictiveness. The fear. Because that fear means the boy with the blindly loving heart is still somewhere inside him, under everything that has hardened over it, waiting to see if it is ever going to be safe to come back out. The only question is whether this marriage can become the kind of place where that is actually possible. And right now, based on everything he has shared, that answer is not yet decided. But it is still worth fighting for, if both of them are willing to do the real and honest work of fighting for it together. She admitted everything, then asked if they could still be friends. He had to process that alone. She sat across from him after admitting to everything. The emotional investment, the physical relationship, the coordinated work trips, the future plans she had been making with someone else, all of it. And then, in what might be the most staggering sentence in this entire story, she told him she still loved him in her own way and thought maybe someday they could still be friends. He had to sit there and process that. In the same room as the person who had just detonated his entire life, in a silence that must have felt enormous and suffocating and completely surreal, he had to hold all of that at once. Alone. He had 6 years with this woman. A shared home. A dog. International moves. Deep integration with both families. A whole life that was not just shared logistically but emotionally, structurally, in ways that take years to build and quietly reshape your entire sense of who you are and where you belong. 6 years of mornings and routines and inside jokes and long flights and learning each other's families and building something that felt permanent. And she was already thinking about friendship. Already doing the mental math on what comes next for her. Already framing her own future while he was still sitting in the rubble of the one they had built together. While he was still trying to figure out what had even happened. Let's build the picture here slowly, because the timeline of this story matters. In the months before he found out, his wife became someone different. She was staying out late. Traveling more. Drinking more. The warmth that had defined their relationship started going quiet in ways that are hard to name but impossible to miss when you love someone. She was present in body sometimes, but emotionally she had already started leaving, already investing her attention and her energy somewhere else. And he noticed. He is very clear about that. He suspected something was wrong. He could feel it the way you feel a change in air pressure before a storm, not quite able to name it, but certain something is coming. But instead of pulling back or protecting himself, he did what a deeply loving and committed partner does. He kept trying to support her. He kept showing up. He tried to work on the relationship. He moved toward her, even as she was quietly moving away. That is not a passive man. That is not someone who was checked out or indifferent. That is a man who could feel the ground shifting under his feet and responded by digging in harder, trying to hold things together through effort and love and presence. And the whole time he was doing that, while he was reaching for her, she was coordinating work trips to spend time with someone else. She knew he sensed something was wrong. She admitted that herself. She could see him trying. She watched him reach. And she kept going anyway. That detail is the one I cannot let go of. She knew. She knew he could feel something was off. She watched him try harder while she pulled further away, and she continued making choices that she admitted she knew were wrong while they were happening. This was not a situation where she got swept up in feelings she did not understand and then came to her senses. This was a sustained, conscious decision over multiple months. A relationship with another person who also has a long-term partner and children. Coordinating schedules. Extending travel. Making plans. That takes real deliberate effort. That is not a moment of weakness. That is a series of decisions made over and over again with full awareness. Oh, and by the way, the other person has kids. Just want to make sure that landed properly. While he was handling all of this, he was also trying to keep functioning professionally. Managing the practical collapse of a shared life, moving, logistics, legal issues. Think about what that actually looks like on a daily basis. You wake up and the grief is sitting right there on your chest before you have even fully opened your eyes, and then you have to open your laptop. You have to answer emails. You have to sound coherent on calls. You have to negotiate lease agreements and figure out where your things are going and what your name is still on and what needs to be untangled. All while the floor feels like it is moving. All while every quiet moment threatens to pull you under. I want you to really sit with that. He was in the worst pain of his life and he was managing spreadsheets. Meanwhile, she was leaning into friends and travel and bars and all the social distractions available to someone who caused a catastrophe and then got to walk away from it. And still remaining emotionally invested in the other relationship. There is a pattern here that shows up a lot in stories like this, and it is worth naming clearly. When someone causes this kind of damage, they often try to soften the exit by keeping one foot still inside the relationship they blew up. The casual texts. The nostalgic references to shared memories. The updates about the dog framed as sweet and innocent. The talk of maybe being friends someday. None of that is for the person who was betrayed. All of that is for the person who did the betraying. It gives them a way to feel like they are not actually the villain. Like they still care. Like this ending is gentler and more mutual than it really is. It is self-soothing dressed up as kindness. He saw through it. He cut emotional contact. And that was exactly the right call. But here is where I want to spend some time, on the questions he is still struggling with, because they are not just his questions. They are the questions that live in the center of every experience like this, and they deserve real and honest answers. He wants to know how someone can claim to love you while betraying you this deeply. He wants to know if people rewrite the relationship in their own minds to justify what they did. He wants to know why the person who caused the damage still expects emotional closeness afterward. He wants to know if low contact is actually the healthiest path. And he wants to know how to stop mentally replaying the betrayal even while outwardly moving on. Here is what I know. People absolutely rewrite the relationship in their minds. It is one of the most consistent and most frustrating patterns in situations like this. The person who cheated often constructs a version of events where they were unhappy, unheard, unfulfilled, and where the affair was a natural and almost inevitable result of that. They do not construct this version because they are purely evil. They construct it because it is very difficult to sit with the reality of having hurt someone deeply while believing yourself to be a good person. So the mind starts editing. It makes the betrayed partner colder in memory, more neglectful, harder to love. It softens the sharp edges of what was actually done. And the person who caused the damage becomes in their own retelling someone who was just trying to survive. His wife's admission that she had mentally checked out for a while is part of that rewriting. That framing suggests her disconnection came first, as if she drifted away and then the affair was a symptom of that drift, as if it was something that happened to her rather than something she chose. But checking out is a choice. Staying checked out instead of having an honest conversation is a choice. Beginning an emotional and physical relationship with someone else while your partner is trying harder to reach you is a choice. The sequencing in her telling might feel explanatory to her. To him, and honestly to me, it sounds like rationalization dressed up as transparency. The question about why she still wanted emotional access after everything is one that a lot of people in his position struggle to understand, and the answer is actually quite simple even if it is painful. She was not trying to protect him by staying in casual contact. She was managing her own guilt and her own grief. Keeping that thread open meant she did not have to fully confront what she had done. Every friendly text, every nostalgic message about a shared memory, every update about the dog was a small act of emotional self-soothing. A way of telling herself that she is still a caring person. That it ended gently. That she is not the bad guy of this story. His decision to cut contact forced her to sit with the truth of it without that cushion, and that is genuinely the kindest and most self-preserving thing he could have done for himself. As for whether low contact or no contact is the healthiest path, in situations like this, where the relationship is ending, where there are no children involved, where the source of the damage is the same person he would be maintaining contact with, no contact is not just healthy. It is necessary. Not because he has to hate her. Not because he is punishing her. But because healing from something like this requires space that genuine no contact actually protects. Every time he gets a casual text or a nostalgic reference, his nervous system has to work through the whole injury again at some level. No contact is not cruelty. It is medicine. Now for the replaying. The mental loop of going back through moments, reanalyzing conversations, spotting the signs you missed, imagining what was happening in parallel to your own life, lying awake at 3 a.m. reconstructing timelines, and asking yourself what you should have seen sooner. That is one of the most exhausting and universal experiences of betrayal trauma, and it does not resolve through willpower or distraction. It resolves through processing, ideally with a good therapist who understands betrayal trauma specifically, through physical routine that gives the nervous system something concrete to regulate around, through social connection that reminds you that you exist outside of this story, and through time. Real time. Not weeks. Months, and sometimes longer. The fact that he is already rebuilding those things, fitness, friendships, routine, finances, is not just admirable. It is exactly right. He is already doing the work even while he is asking whether he is doing it right. Here is my verdict on this entire situation. She did not just have an affair. She ran a parallel life for months, consciously, while watching him try to hold their marriage together. She used his love and his effort as cover while she invested in someone else. And when it all came out, her first instinct was to manage how it looked, to control the narrative with friends and family, to keep emotional access to the person she had hurt, and to float the idea of friendship as if that were a reasonable thing to offer someone whose life she had dismantled. None of that is the behavior of someone who is genuinely reckoning with what they did. He handled this with more grace and more dignity than most people could manage. He kept functioning. He stayed out of spiraling. He asked honest questions instead of burning everything down. And he did the hard and painful work of cutting contact even though part of him probably still wanted her to reach out. That is not weakness. That is the controlled, deliberate behavior of a person who respects himself enough to protect what is left of his peace. What he needs to hear, and what I hope lands clearly, is that the questions he is sitting with are not signs that he is broken or stuck. They are signs that he is a thoughtful person trying to make sense of something that fundamentally does not make sense. He will not find a reason that finally makes the betrayal logical. There is no explanation she can give him that will make it hurt less or make it fair. But he does not need that. He needs to build his life back on his own terms, without her in it, and trust that the man he is putting back together is already more resilient and more clear-eyed than the one who walked into that marriage. That version of him is not gone. He is just being rebuilt. And from everything he has shown in the way he handled this, he is going to be okay. Drop a comment below and tell me which story hit harder for you today. And if this kind of content means something to you, a like and a subscribe genuinely helps more than you know.